They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where we get to hang out with one of the coolest and most intelligent people on the planet, Chance Garton. Chance is a powerhouse of presence and depth of thought that dives deeper than most rabbit holes and beyond the font of most wells. He is the oracle reader who brings a heart-centered connection to channel truth into this realm from beyond, and he is the soul-guided badass who weaves and wanders farther than most to bring us all back the choicest nuggets of goodness and reminders of our never-ending essence, anchoring it all together right here and right now. It is Chance Garton of Interverse. Chance, welcome back to Rogue Ways, as always.
Yeah, really excited about it. I always feel like I need to jump up and do like one of these like victory poses after you introduce me.
Just gotta psych
Get me
it up.
psyched up. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I gotta say hi to all the fam in the chat.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about vibratory healing. And Bad B in the chat, he sent me a copy of your book. That Snake Jones sent him a couple and gave him the advice to book gifting is good magic. And so he gifted the extra copy to me. And I love that. So thank you to both of them. And I did the bibliomancy thing with your new book. And the page I opened up to earlier this evening was literally about everything is vibration. So I was like, yeah, there it is. I was going to bring it in here and read that, but I forgot. I can only remember so many things.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I was so touched to learn that people are gifting my books to each other. I was like, you guys are so awesome. It's such a fun book to do that with too. And I love that it's being used in this way because that's really what it was most meant for. And every time someone shares a story from using it in that way, it's always like exactly right on, which I'm not really surprised about, but I like to share with everyone else so they realize they can go grab this and use it in that tale. And that's all endings are beginnings for anybody who doesn't already know, and you can grab it in the Rogue Ways shop. So that's so cool. Thank you, everybody. And I want to also bring up that we're a little over a month away from the next One Day of Brightness, at which Chance is going to be another presenter and teacher and practitioner with us. Last One Day of Brightness was so amazing, and Chance was there for that. And every One Day of Brightness has been so amazing. And this is our full circle coming back. This is going to complete the cycle of equinoxes and solstices and the events One Day of Brightness that we've had on each one of those. We started last winter at the 3 days of darkness, and then we've done one each solstice and equinox and just raised the brightness and the energy and really anchored it in ourselves. And all of the people who come, which I think we'll probably touch on some of these principles today, they really enhance that symphony of harmonic vibration with each other so that we all get deeper and we all get stronger and we all get better just because there's that many people there with that intention. It's just like Jesus said, or wherever one or more gathered in my name, there I am. It's true of anything. We're all there gathered in the name of becoming brighter and clearer and, uplifting ourselves. And so it's maximize, and it's just so powerful and cool. And I want to remind people of that because tickets are already on sale. And if you want to go grab a spot, you can go right now to rogueways.org, head over to the shop, and once you scroll past the categories, I think it's the second thing because it's the second best-selling item in the shop. For the past however many months, because people love it and it's awesome. There's a reason that they love it. And I hope every single person out there listening who feels drawn to that comes and joins us. It's going to be super cool.
Yeah, I want to see a lot of you guys there. I actually learned moves in the last event that I've been using to this day.
Yeah.
I used today and was very helpful. But I got to correct you, Lindsay. They Mandela affected that Bible verse. It's actually where 2 or 3 gather in my name, not 1 or more. So
fuck them. That's stupid. I'm if I'm gathered in your name, here you are. So they can say whatever they want, but we know the truth. I didn't realize they Mandela affected that too.
Apparently. Yeah. Someone was saying it in the Telegram chat and I was like, I mean, I don't know one way or the other, but I always heard it the first way. So
Yeah, weird.
sneaky,
Yeah.
sneaky Bible verse changing.
It's interesting too, because I had this whole idea like this is mostly online that we're finding these Mandela effect things, and so it's AI, and they're seeing what they can get away with. But Harmony, Fronter House of Wildcraft Wellness, and we're good friends. We go back a long ways, and if you guys aren't following her channel on YouTube, go check it out. But we went and looked at the actual Bible to look at the wolf, the one like like laying down with the wolf, or I don't know, and it actually was different. So I was like, well, the AI can't affect like all the paper copies out there. So there's more than one thing going on, I'm sure. But anyways, I'm going to ask you, Chance, the pointless question of the episode, which is what's the most fun you've had recently? What's the funnest thing you've done recently?
Whew. I guess I can choose how long ago recently means. And it was probably the meetup that we did over in Colorado. That was
rad.
so much fun.
Yeah.
You and me and Dan Shukas from Cosmic Keys, we met up with some fans or listeners or fam. Let's just call it fam.
Really, it's family, yeah.
And Dan played wild bluegrass music and entertained us. And we talked about all kinds of stuff all night and just felt good to be faces uncovered in the midst of super cooties and all connecting and giving hugs and high fives in real life. I got to meet Johnny too. I don't know if Johnny's tuning into this one, but he's the man.
He's probably around. He's pretty cool. I'm partial to him. It was awesome too. It was like this beautiful sunset behind Dan and his band playing all night, and it was really, really beautiful. Yeah, and then we had a pretty good turnout too. You know, I know some people, it goes both ways. There's people who are like, can't wait, like, oh my god, I get to like meet up with people and hang out. And there's other people who are like, I want to, but like it's not very comfortable to come out. And so it's always so cool to see people who actually make it out and do that, because I know it can be outside of some people's comfort zones. But once you're there hanging out, like it's always fun. It's always awesome.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I think Rachel, who was there, is in the chat. So what up?
What's up, Rachel? I know Rachel doesn't mind either. Some people I'm like, I'm not sure if people want to be like called out on live. So I don't know. But if you're in the chat and you were there, you can say what's up to people and let them know.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I think
we're all already on the list anyway.
Yeah, we already are. I'm really like focusing on pushing my consciousness into the timeline where we don't get put in camps. And that we get to remain free and thrive and continue to transform this world into its best, highest state. So that's where I'm at right now with all of that.
I'm on my way to that world of not being in a camp, unless you're talking about like going camping, which I want to do more of. So in that sense, we'll just slightly alter the trajectory. Different kind of camp.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I know that we're going to talk about energy and sound and vibration and all of these things tonight. And I know that you have like a presentation that we get to look at too. So I don't know if you want to just like jump into that, or if you want to talk a little bit about things before we jump into some of the images and ideas that you have to share.
Yeah, let's just jump. And then, we'll take our time meandering however necessary.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm going to be talking about, this really awesome topic of vibrational sound healing. So,
and I want to say too that I feel like you're one of the most knowledgeable people. I read books that you recommended actually, and when I was reading them, I was like, Chance already kind of told me all of this. Like you really are. I think if others don't recognize you as an expert in the field, it's just because they don't know you yet.
I feel like I need more practice actually doing the thing to consider myself an expert, but I don't know. The titles, statuses, right? I've done it. You and I have done it. Maybe that'd be a good place to start, because vibrational healing is something that transcends just physical proximity, which I think is a really cool place to start.
Yeah.
You titled this perfectly, Song of the Aether. Well, etherically, those were tuning forks, by the way, that I just showed in that last image. Big ass tuning forks. Really cool ones.
Big mama jamas.
I'll tell you where those are from later, but yeah, I mean, what's happening is something between the intention of the tuner and the receptivity of the one receiving the healing. That's where the real action is at, the mechanism. And so the tools can vary dramatically. In fact, you don't even need an implement like a fork necessarily. You can use your voice to do this, and you can use your voice on yourself. There are tones you can learn, vocalizations that are targeted to certain meridian points or organs, like the one for the lungs is just to go, I don't know all of them, but like that's something, if I was an expert, I'd be like, this is this, and this is that. But, this is a huge field to dive into, and we're decades away from any type of comprehensive library of understanding on the subject. The books I recommended to you, the things I have learned have come largely through those works. I'm going to talk about, I'll pull up this next slide. We're going to talk a lot about the work of Eileen Day McCusick, who is a friend of mine and author of Tuning the Human Biofield and Electric Body, Electric Health. Got to be friends with her from doing a couple of shows together and a little bit of work outside of the podcasting realm. And she's a superwoman. Like, if there's anyone that's proven evidence that this stuff is highly effective, it's Eileen, because you can see as a public figure that in her work, she's been, visible for a long time, and she's aging backwards, like dramatically.
Yeah.
Like dramatically. It's pretty amazing to watch. And just all around, like, I remember the other day I caught one of her live, like she did an improv live stream on YouTube just to like test out her ability to do it. I happened to be on my computer and I jumped in. She's just so tapped in that like right at that moment, spontaneously, she did a healing for a particular like issue that I was wanting to improve on right at that moment.
Wow.
I was like, man, I need to figure out a way to get myself back in balance. And then it was like, Eileen Day McCusick is live. And I was like, what? So I jumped in and yeah, it did the trick. And in fact, it's almost like a cheat code in a video game. You don't want to use it because you don't want to make the game too easy, maybe. And that's where some of the hesitancy to just use these tools all the time comes from. But I'm getting personally over that and more into the mode of just like, when in doubt, apply tones.
Yeah.
Like earlier, I did a lot of shows this week. Okay. So this is my last one in a stretch of several day after day. And I did one today already. And at a certain point late in the afternoon, earlier in the evening, I was like, am I burned out? Like, do I actually I caught myself like stumbling over words a little bit. And I was like, am I really ready to go do a night show for 2 hours? And I was like, apply tone.
Apply tone.
And so I spent maybe, I don't know, half an hour just laying in bed, playing my different solfeggio forks to myself, like listening to them closely, treating it like a meditation where instead of trying to be focused on no thought, you just try to not stop listening to the tone. Just listen to the tone only. And it definitely got me charged right back up. I felt great afterward, super ready to come on here and deliver information on the topic. And it's good because, you don't want to teach something that you don't even use or doesn't even work, like that isn't important to you. And this stuff is really important to me. It's helped change my life dramatically. And yeah, you don't even need to be, I kind of started hinting at this, but you don't even need to be in the same place to do this practice. Like one time you and I did that together. Maybe we could talk about like the remote healing experience. Like, how was that for you? And I'll kind of explain how I did it so people can get an idea of how they might put these things to work for people they care about.
Yeah, it's really cool because you actually got me into the self-tuning using the sonic slider, which I'm sure you're going to mention at some point. So I do that every day. Like genuinely, I do it every day to myself. I spend a lot of time like doing that with myself, and I see improvement from that. And I think it was after I already had that fork and was using it, but I started getting, I think this is what happened, and correct me if I'm wrong and if you remember my life better than me, but I'm pretty sure I had a really severe migraine for the first time in my life. And that I was dealing with that, and it's anyone out there who has migraines knows how excruciating it is, and especially if you've never had one, it just kind of blindsides you because you're like, what the hell? Like, I can be in this much pain in my head. It's insane. And I think I let you know about that, and you were like, let's try this out. Right? Is that what happened?
Yeah. And it,
Okay.
I mean, didn't even take that much time. Basically, it doesn't even require a phone connection or anything. The receiver doesn't even need to be able to hear the forks physically. And my process is just to I use a massage table whenever I'm doing this on somebody in person. So I just get out the massage table and use my imagination perception, because imagination isn't fake. It's actually super real. And I just put the body on the table like a holographic dummy body, imaginary body. And I work in that field, and we'll talk about the biofield and how that anatomy works and more as we go. But I work in there, and the result and like how the forks react for me is no different than if someone's actually there. And I don't remember the specific trouble area, but I think there is even a place where the forks were reacting. And I was like, yeah, I was getting a lot of static over here on this thing, on this side. And you said, oh, I don't remember at all what it was, but it had to do with an old injury, I think.
There was one that was an old injury, and there was another area where you're like, there's something in your like lower abdomen and it's going all the way up to your head. And I don't even think I told you I was having a migraine. I think I just told you I was having a really big flare up and that things were just not good. And so you did this without knowing that, and were telling me that. And I was learning that my vagus nerve, right? Is that what it's called? God.
Yeah, that's the one that goes all the way down to Vegas.
I was learning that, this the energetic side of things and the physical side of things are like mirrors, right? And they're deeply intertwined. And so I had already been learning that my vagus nerve connection there is like basically the fire that's built inside of us energetically that kind of feeds all of our spiritual work, which I do a lot of. I mean, I seeing clients and working with people every single day. And so I use a lot of spiritual energy doing that, and I wasn't properly recharging that fire that like fuels all of that work. And so it being empty and dead and it's connected. The spot where that fire is in your body is where the vagus nerve kind of reaches its bottom area, and the top is like your third eye, which is a lot of spiritual energy is coming through. Visions are coming through for me and all of these things when I'm working with people. And that's where my headache was, and the migraine was. And I was just realizing like, oh, I'm getting these migraines because I am like still using this third eye area and spiritual energy, but that lower area is not filled with enough energy to be doing it. So I'm like running myself dry, basically, energetically. There's also physical counterparts that go beyond everything I just described, but just that, like, it's so fascinating to me because every time I learn about some of my physical ailments and their energetic counterparts, it always makes perfect sense how they're intertwined and why they're intertwined and why I'm experiencing both at once. It's just fascinating. And you nailed it without knowing any of those things were going on with me.
Yeah. And it's all just because I was listening and feeling for where in the field the forks were getting sticky. And then there's a little more to it than that, but you'll just like, the idea will just pop into your head. Like, is it this? And Eileen even claims, I mean, she's been doing it for years, that she can like basically read someone's Akashic with a fork in them. And
when I
don't doubt it at all.
When I work with people with my forks, I'm doing past life work often, energy work in their past life, energetic areas of their sphere. So I agree in my own experience as well.
That's cool. There's even a biofield anatomy part of the biofield anatomy that relates to the ancestor stuff. So there's entire modalities of tuning fork therapy that are specifically just targeted for that exact thing, either ancestor, generational trauma, or past life stuff. So it is all connected. Like, and it's cool when you start to dive into the fractal anatomy of your bubble space, that it's very much like the way that other aspects of nature grow.
And we've talked on Middle Path, at least, for those people out there who like Rogue Ways and Middle Path. And Middle Path is my show on Rockfin only on Thursday nights. And, I did a whole episode on the Schumann resonance, and we talked a lot about how these giant wavelengths that are like spanning the whole planet, affect us, and we can harmonize with them and amplify them. And then we're like vibing with each other. Like, that's what harmony is, right? That's what like symphony is that I'm picking up that vibe of the Schumann resonance, and then I'm amplifying it back out again so other people can catch it. There's all this research about it. That's on this like massive scale. These are like a lot tinier, and they're intentionally directed, right? Like when you're working on that, it's coming just to me. It's not going to Johnny, who's in the next room. It's not going to anyone in your house with you, right? And it's like That is amazing to me, that we have this power of our imagination to really get specific with it. Like, us and the forks are working together. Us and the tones are partners, right?
Yeah, it's all just your intent is getting carried on a wave, and that wave is in the ether, and the ether is all one big non-local interconnected soup of everythingness.
Yes. I love that. We need a t-shirt that says exactly that.
I guess I'll pull up the next slide. I got a good quote from the book here where she says, Eileen says, the human body is not only an instrument, it is a self-tuning instrument. Just like you can use a tuning fork to tune a piano or a guitar, somewhat miraculously, you can also use a tuning fork to tune the body. So there's a lot to unpack with this. I'm going to go to the next slide and then we'll talk about both. And the best summary I know of biofield tuning is the syntropic process of bringing lost life force back into our bodies. And so we can look at our entire life system, everything in the entire universe, really, as being an electrical system. And there's the button. I was looking for my stop screen share. And vibratory healing is something that works on the electrical field. I mean, there's a lot of amazing research and science that backs up on the material level the type of claims that Eileen makes about the forks. And she's not the only researcher. There's also Dr. Jerry Tennant. There's numerous others that have done great writing and great actual like field research on these subjects. But I think she's one of the best writers about it because she knows how to pace things in a way where it feels like, a lot of these type of books, they get all very wrapped up in clinical descriptions and the experiments and giving you like a practice to try. But when you look at the chapters one by one, they're kind of all in this same format. It's like this staccato, monotone rhythm to the whole book. And I've read a lot of books like that and got a lot out of them, but Eileen knows how to make it like salty and sweet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the etheric clarity and radiance of people that do this work on themselves for a long time and progress far in the healing process, because you're now vibing on all parts of your spectrum. You're activating the rainbow body, or however you want to describe it. But why biofield tuning, why sound is able to actually bring lost life force back into our bodies? This is a big topic to get into. When you're discussing something like this fork, which is a weighted tuning fork, there's a lot of processes at work, including a piezoelectric effect, because you have many crystalline structures in your body. And actually the water in your cells is not even liquid in the state of like solid liquid gas. It's actually a type of bioplasma. And plasma is what your field around your body is as well. And so how can water be plasma? Well, the best way to describe what plasma is it's like the plasma is like the actual wave itself in a sense. It is like the energy in motion. It is life in action. It's the verb aspect of existence. So everything is always a type of plasma on some part of the spectrum, but your bioplasma is stimulated by electrical currents and piezoelectricity. For those, I maybe didn't explain that properly, but it is when something crystal is vibrated or squeezed, it actually produces an electric charge. It's how quartz is able to power a watch and things of that nature. So applying a vibration, even if it's not on the body, if it's just sound in the air around you, is actually stimulating a piezoelectric effect for your cells. You're actually giving electricity to your cells. And there are machines that'll do this. I know that it's pretty popular right now to restore like old Tesla devices that juice you up, and it's like a human cell phone charger port. And that's really cool. And I hear those are very effective, and I'd love to experiment with them. But one of the great things about the tuning forks is it's a very low amperage of electricity, and it's not generating any like dirty EMF fields around it. And I don't know if that's a bigger or less big problem from one device to another. And, it's not that tuning forks are the perfect end all be all tool either. In fact, they're made of aluminum typically. And some teachers in the past have even stated that just touching aluminum is harmful to your aura. I can't speak to that. I know that's something Steiner used to say. And I know they like to try to douse us with aluminum everywhere they can. But, you got to pick your battles. And I find these to be highly effective and helpful in recharging my aura and installing me back into the body. So if there is like a downside to it being aluminum, it's far outweighed by the benefit, in my opinion. But perhaps that's like down the road, something that could be improved upon is materials being used, or maybe we just graduate to doing everything with our voice. But the biofield tuning process, bringing life force back into the body. So that's not just describing the electricity that's being infused into the body and into the cells, but also the fact that your plasma can become stagnant. Because like I said, what plasma really is at the core is this movement of energy, not even like the particle itself, it is the wave. And so whenever that circuitry is caught in a compartmentalized closed loop system, and this really connects back to some recent work I did with Wayne McCroy on cybernetics in the transhumanist genre, because like everything they're doing to manipulate human beings has to do with compartmentalization and breaking natural feedback loops to replace them with artificial feedback loops. And that's what you get in your aura from traumatic experiences. And in fact, I even personally think that our memories are stored in the field around our body, that brains don't hold memory at all. And I think there's lots of evidence for that, and that it's in the field. And that's why one of the markers of a highly ensouled being is a long memory, a very detailed memory. So I think that has to do with like you're a proper container for your own selfhood and it's not leaking out. And when we do have leaks in our aura, when our own energy is seeping out of the cracks, where these pressure systems have built up because of broken circuitry, it actually even manifests in the way that you see people's faces begin to change as they age. This is something Eileen talks about, but like some older people literally look like they're just spilling out of themselves. Like their nose is all like long and hooked. And when they were 20, they didn't look like that at all. And their ears are funky and deformed and big. But you look at other older people and they look like they're hot, hot old people.
Hot old people.
So when we bring tone that is coherent to the field in these places that there are tangles and broken circuitry, we can cause the field to then actually resonate to the coherent tone. Because, and this is my theory on it, this isn't from the practitioners, I guess, but I think that energy is consciousness, and that like water, it takes the form of its container. And so if you have distorted energetic circuitry in your field, it manifests as what we experience to be like demons and possession. And I'm not saying that this explains that away or that there isn't such a thing as an entity. I'm saying that there's many multifaceted ways to look at all this stuff. And so whenever we bring, so the way that consciousness works, I think many of us who are psychic inclined have experienced this. Somebody can walk into a room and either suck the life out of it and the joy out of it, or they can bring higher energy, like everyone perks up when this individual walks in. You could be what Eileen calls electron donor or electron stealer. But generally, the lower, like the less, I don't want to say lower, but the less coherent mind, the less coherent consciousness when it comes between human beings will typically adhere to or match or mirror the coherent vibration that's around it. That's why whenever you do deal with things from the perspective of them being an entity, if you know who you are completely and you just say what's up, like you have no authority to mess with me and you're not allowed in my space, you're the more coherent one. It's almost like another way of putting it is the mind that knows who it is, or the mind that knows that everything is a part of self, is always going to have power over the mind that thinks it's disconnected and not all is self, right? So in much the same way, you bring coherent energy, which is a form of consciousness, from the fork. I mean, when I was using the forks on myself earlier, the non-weighted ones, I was noticing just how strong, even when my eyes were closed, whenever I moved the fork around my face, that it was like someone was shining a flashlight in front of my closed eyes.
Mhm.
So anyway, so that's kind of how the tuning process works, is that you are causing the compartmentalized and the illusion of separation type of energy inside you to return to a wholeness vibration. And now your mind and your will and intention are powerful, and you can snap back into the dissonant configuration at will. But a lot of times once you have that moment of and you've like relaxed that, and you keep spending time with retuning yourself, you'll find long-term changes in like personality, and not like that you won't still be yourself, but that a lot of the old things that caused you trouble before just won't have a place to live inside you like they used to.
The distraction can't take root, and the disruption can't take root. You just say, it's like those demons. You just like watch it go by. You're like, bye. You don't get to be here anymore. And I love that, when you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the energetic body, and how like the flow is restored. And when I'm working on people, I'll find those sticky spots or those blockages, and then we'll just bring light and love and intention. I'm working with many different things at the same time, not just the sound, but the sound, like you said earlier, is like the carrier of it almost, and it has its own intention, it feels like, and its own power, and then we can like add on to that like these other intentions too that enhance it, and it goes in, and I'm just picturing it like how it starts to flow again, and how it starts to roll again. The whole energetic body starts to flow and get brighter again, and it's not necessarily like that thing is gone forever. Now, like you said, you can still go back to it. You can still find that disruption again and bring it back into your field and like rework it and like add to it and make it a blockage again. But it's like your body, your energetic body and your physical body, all your bodies, they want to be whole and healed and in their form that promotes the most flow. And so they like respond to it. And I love the feeling of it too, is like the opposite of force. A lot of times in medicine, we're like forcing in, like, you take this chemical and like you make it right, or we're going to take your bone and like break it and then reshape it. Like, they do that to people's jaws and stuff. And it's like, and there's a place for some of that. I'm not trying to say like, but it just, that forceful energy is like a little bit different, a lot different, opposite than bringing this intention and this energetic waveform in that your body can then respond to and choose to like invite in and vibe with, and like, oh yeah, this is what I want. There's a lot more like, just feels more consenting and more like gentle, even though it's powerful. It can be powerful and profound, but it's still this gentle energy, and I just like that a lot too.
Yeah, I think future people will look back on our current time, and of many forms of barbarism that they'll find appalling, the way that we treat the sick and injured might be some of the worst. Now, that being said, if I broke my arm, I would probably have to go to the hospital to get it set, because nobody I know personally would take care of that for me.
And you want it to set right. Yeah, there is a place for a lot.
But it seems like these are the type of skills that could be more widely available if there weren't certain gatekeepers in the way.
Gatekeepers.
Yeah. PhD Dr. Gates. Who's also Farmer Gates. Owns the most farmland.
Yeah, he's a farmer. He's a philanthropist. Yeah, that guy's a piece of shit.
Oh, I think you want a good rabbit hole is Michelle Gibson on YouTube. She's kind of like a more detailed John Levi. Not that John Levi isn't detailed enough. He just does shorter videos. Michelle Gibson, definitely worth taking down her YouTube channel. Her website is piercingtheveilofillusion.com.
I think I've been to her website, but not her channel, now that you're saying that.
Oh, she's so good. Well, she did a recent like hour long about George Peabody, the so-called father of modern philanthropy. And when you get into all of those, like, Robber Baron era philanthropists, it is just as sketchy and just as cookie cutter of background story as it is with all the like mysterious fires that burned down the old world architecture. So that's a tangent, but
yeah, interesting.
But there's related topics in there, because people like Levi and Michelle Gibson, they get into the cathedral thing. When I was in Denver, I mentioned coming to Colorado, I was checking out the cathedral, and I was just like, it was my first time seeing one of those things close up ever since I'd learned more about the Antiquitech, and it was just mind blowing. I was like, somebody please find me the person who could build this right now.
Yeah.
Like
Or
I've never
anything
seen
like
anything
it.
like this. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
unreal.
I was thinking too when you were talking about crystal, and I was thinking about, like you were saying, that we have all this crystal in our body. Actually, our blood is crystalline, the water in our body is structured in crystalline, and we have salts all over, and those salts are essential to our function. And we could do a whole own show or just about that. And we've done some shows on crystals on Rogueways, and I'm sure you've probably talked about it too. But I was thinking, like, could you have crystal tuning forks? Because that sounds awesome. Oh, you have it. Oh, selenium. And the Antiquitech is what made me think of too, as I've thought of before, and maybe I got this from my friend Sasha. So Sasha, if you're listening, I think I got this from you. But the idea that those pipe organs they use, maybe at some point even before that, were crystal, but at the very least those windows with the sigils, with the rose windows, and those types of cymatic energy signatures are also crystalline. Crystal is like the key to all of this, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, my amateur alchemy knowledge, the crystals are the salt component. So the fact that this element of our existence is obscured, I think, kind of mirrors in the fractal the way that masculinity is completely annihilated by modern culture.
Yeah.
And that was actually have a whole show on that subject, more or less all about that, with Ben Balderson from not too long ago. If people want to dive in to that, lots of good things to reference back to my own channel for this this episode. This is fun, by the way. Like, I just want you to know, I've been looking forward to this all week. I had to fight through a lot of interviews to get here, and this is super fun. It's like, I'm just really grateful to get to collab with you, Lindsay. We have the best times, and our audience have such amazing crossover, and
I know.
everybody's friends with each other, and we have Telegram parties, and it's amazing.
Pretty cool. I know. I always look forward to it because it's just like hanging out with a friend rather than, you know, some kind of official formal deal, which is nice. It's like relaxing instead of draining. Not that other shows are draining, but you know what I mean. It's just like, it's easier to build
It's
it
just
up.
lower pressure, and the pressure we put on ourselves, like,
Yeah.
I gotta perform, I gotta do a good job, gotta be a good boy.
Yeah, and here we're like, we just hang out with our hella awesome friend, like, party.
Yeah. So, you know, that kind of ties into my next point about what you're saying regarding things being gentler with sound healing. I think, and they're just more beautiful, more harmonious. I think that aesthetics make a really good meter for a philosophy. Like, what is your aesthetic reaction to whatever the thing is? Is it beautiful? Does it feel good? Is it cool to you? Like, whatever words you want to put on it. That's actually why I threw in a slide of these forks right here. I don't actually own this type of fork, but there's a guy at tunedearth.com who makes these massive super tuning forks. And if I wish I had a video queued up, but I don't. So we'll just have to let people like go find him on Instagram if they're interested.
That's right.
But when you watch the video of these forks vibrating, maybe I should even go find one, because it is really wild. Like,
I want to see it. I don't know if
yeah,
those two people
you
are
see
in
the
love.
metal waving. The metal is wobbling like it's made of butter
I
or
love
liquid
that.
or something. It is
Dude.
crazy.
We should watch it.
Okay, I could easily pull it up.
I feel like you can just look at those two and feel, and like they're in love or something. I don't know if they just like are really good actors, but I'm like, man, that's an intense energy going on between them. Can you imagine just like doing tuning fork to each other at the same time while making eye contact with like the person you're in love with most? I think I'm gonna have to do that.
It sounds like a good move.
Johnny's like, shit. No, just joking. He's like, yes.
But yeah, I mean, you nailed it. The aesthetic of that is beautiful, right? Like, not just the forks themselves, but the entire vibe of, maybe it's just good marketing photography or whatever, but I'm just kidding. You have, you know, whenever you can get an option, and those are expensive ones, but I would use it for life. Like, someday I'm going to get one when I have the funding. And when you ever have the option to go for the beautiful choice, you should, because that is like, that's where source energy wants to be. And that's like just another aspect of what is harmony. And we're kind of trained to be the opposite. Like, don't judge a book by its cover, you know, but actually your aesthetic reaction to things is super, super valid.
It's part of
your
the
intuition.
it's part of the information that you're getting. Yeah. And I really, Eileen talks about, I think, and I hope I'm not just making this up, but I think she talks towards the end of her book about how some of her forks would sort of wear out or break down over time, but when she learned to sort of like intend for them to, wow. Sorry, I just saw that wobbling and stopped. Like, that's crazy. This is
That's
like
that showstopper right there. Sorry.
crazy. This is like the liquidity of all matter. I did an episode not that long ago about the 5 elements, and we talked about how like really everything is ether. Ether comes down into plasma, comes down into solid, comes down into gas, I skipped gas, and down into liquid, but they're all just continuums. It's just on a spectrum. Like it's all.
That baby's still going from
Yeah.
one strike.
Jesus, that's so cool.
I got to give you one of those. I think they set you back like $1,000, but that is an amazing work of art.
It's pretty
This
amazing.
Instagram page is super fun.
And
just
what's
to
the
look at these
material
things.
that one's made out of?
I don't know. But I think it's still aluminum, but it's polished, obviously,
Yeah.
to be like a mirror finish, which is pretty cool. I think you can get a mirror finish with aluminum. I'll have to look more into the forks, but they also have these cool, like,
Design
etchings on it. And
they've got the platonic solids, so which goes back to the 5 states of matter. But I appreciated that Eileen talked about this, intending your fork to do this job for you, to give gratitude to the fork. And maybe I'm reading a bunch more in than what she said, but like the way I took it was like, I'm gonna tell my fork every day, like, thank you for this, and let's work together, and I appreciate you, and let's make sure you last forever and ever and ever, because you're doing such good work, and we're doing good work together. Like, I have this little conversation with it, and I think not only will that keep it lasting longer, and I know some of the people who aren't as woo-woo as me out there are like tuning out at this. They're like, yeah, right, whatever. But I also think it helps me do a better job when I'm actually working with them, because we have a relationship, and I do this with my cars, and I do it with my electronics, and I do it with my things. I'm like, I love you. You're doing a good job. Keep doing a good job. And I swear to God, I get longer life out of things than like anybody else, because I think everything has a little bit of consciousness in it.
yeah, I was really sad that my car just recently became undrivable.
One of mine did recently too. It's like losing a good friend.
Yeah, we've been through some stuff together, and I don't know, on the fractal level, there's your car is kind of like your car.
Yeah.
You're incarnated. It's just another level of the shells of existence that you have. You got your energy body, you got your physical body, you got your car body.
Your car body, yeah.
You got the whole earth body, however you want to look at it. So yeah, shout out to all the unsung car heroes. But really, you've got the ability to infuse spirit into your tools, like you described, whether you want to say that you're generating like a tulpa that's connected to it or what.
Right.
At the end of the day, though, it's the appreciation. You're using appreciation just the same way that it's used in the commerce world, which is to mean that it actually gains value over time. You are appreciating it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
that's a good point.
I've been using, this is like maybe just me being a mega appreciative fan of Eileen's, but that's another lingo switch up that she pointed out to me, which was really helpful. Like, to use that word over gratitude or over thanks occasionally, to just
Appreciate.
to add the energy to it, not just be glad for what is, but to like grow it, appreciate it.
I love that concept. That's awesome. Appreciate.
Yeah.
We can all grow all of our things that we appreciate.
So I guess I'll pop up another slide just so we can keep grooving.
Yeah.
This is the solfeggio tones. We've actually talked about this on a previous episode. I've got this particular fork set. This comes from omnivos.com. So all of the people I've talked about, I'm not affiliated in any way with any of them to profit off you buying their stuff, just so people know. I think the stuff's cool though. And I've been using that set for a while. I forgot to check with you if we could hear it, but I've actually got the solfeggio tones mapped to my mixer board.
That's so rad.
I'm pretty sure if I hit these buttons, we could test out some of these tones.
Let's try it.
Okay. So everybody out there, if they have a moment to do it, I'd like them to imagine light that accompanies the tones as we go through them. So we'll start with the 396, and we'll just position this particular light deep in the core, in that region that Lindsay was talking about, the bottom of the vagus nerve, right? So try to give yourself an imaginary red light that grows and pulsates in your root with this tone as we listen to it. And just tell me, Lindsay, if you actually can't hear it.
Okay. I was hearing it, but then I didn't hear it.
Okay, so you did hear that.
I heard it for a little bit, and then I didn't hear it for a while. And then I said
How
that,
weird.
and I haven't heard anything since then.
Let's see what chatters say.
Okay.
Is that audible? Might have to rethink my audio input with Zoom to make that work. And chatters, give us any heads up on that. Oh, I'm still on the screen share too. I'll pull that down.
Nobody has said anything yet.
Oh,
Even though
okay.
there's
Well, we'll hold off on playing more tones till we can verify. I actually think that maybe it didn't come through.
I know if I can hear it, they should be able to hear it.
That's true.
Yeah. And I was going to ask while we're waiting to see if anybody has any feedback about whether they could hear that or not. You know, that list you had was everything I could recognize except do was oot. You know, we all know like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But why did it say oot or ut instead of do? Somebody said there, Jake is saying he heard a short, small ding, and Rachel said she heard it for a second and then was quiet. So I think they heard what I heard. We heard it for like a second, and then it seemed to cut off. And
if I had to guess, I bet it is Zoom attempting to suppress
the
sound that is not a voice, if I had to think about it. So I could try to switch my setting to where it's not going to suppress the background noise. We could try one more time, or we could just not worry about that for now.
Let's try one more time.
Okay, let's see if that works. Because if they heard part of it, but not all of it, that would explain it. Okay, so we'll go to the, and why, I'll answer that question, why it's not do. It has to do with an old, like, hymn. I can't remember the name of the hymn. It has something to do with John the Baptist, I think. And it's in Latin. And like the first line of each of the lines of the verses have these do, re, mi, fa, sol, la built into them, kind of encoded in it. You know, the way that old alchemical ideas are hidden in artwork. And I guess it used to be, at some point, it wasn't do. That was just the previous version of what you named that lower tone.
Ah.
Yeah. But we'll try out. Now we're going to go for a lower sound, because I'm going to start talking about the sonic slider, and maybe this won't get suppressed, but the sonic slider is a very low frequency, very healing, grounding frequency. So I'll play, and that's the weighted tuning fork that we've been talking about right here. I'll talk more about what frequency that is. Let's see if you hear this. So I want to refer to a comment in the chat from Illumi, not me, where he said, or she said, the first tone is not like a normal root tone, which is usually pretty low pitched, I thought. Now, that is true in the sense that I'm not making any claims about those tones being tied to one thing or another. Other people might make claims about this or that, but I've found that you can use a coherent frequency or sound on any area or chakra area and make it any color you want and juice anything that you want. That's why I think maybe this was off the air, but we were talking about whether or not you needed a full set of like 8 or 9 different forks. And I think it is cool to have. I'm kind of a nerd about it. I think you could do the work with a single fork or a couple of forks easily. But it sounds like everybody heard that, which is cool. So I just figured out why this has been a problem in previous shows and people couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
Had to do with my noise suppression, which I don't really need Zoom to have because I've already got this fancy mixer to deal with that. But since we're on the subject, maybe I'll hit us with like some binaural action where we can have multiple tones playing at once. And for this, I want to maybe visualize more of a solar plexus golden glow during the first tone. And then as you hear the second tone come in, I'd like us to visualize sort of a violet, bluish, electric purple, your choice of shade, envelope or sheath around your entire body. This can be wrapped pretty close to your body, or you can have it expand out and be seeing this bubble as wide as your wingspan. But let's just put our imaginary visualization faculties into sync with the tones. So you start with the solar plexus when you hear the first tone, and then the second tone bring in the outer layer of this sheath that will go with purple on, and allow those to one to expand out and the other to reach in and start to swirl and mix with each other, so that your protective barrier or the protective part of yourself can also be aligned with your intention and your highest will, so that you're not just creating a barrier of protection, but actually a boundary that is permeable to that which serves you and is in alignment with you, not just like, a force field of block everything.
Yeah. And for those who aren't sure, your solar plexus is right above your belly button, under your heart, but above your belly button.
Yeah. I'm pretty into the living from the solar plexus even more than living from the heart chakra. That could be another topic we got into, but solar plexus is where it's at. All right, so we'll start with that and visualize those two things for us while we'll play more than one tone here. All right. It's like an emergency broadcast system, Lindsay said.
But way better.
Yeah, right. Some of those tones remind me of like a broken TV. Burp. But a little less like Arcani.
Yeah, that was cool. I love that visualization of coming out from the solar plexus and then in from the shell, and understanding that flow of like, you create your will, you create your space, and you can also let things in that are good, true, and beautiful, safe for you, or however you want to think about that. That's cool.
Yeah, that was fun. I'm glad we got to make that work properly.
And we can trust your sounds. You recorded them yourself. We know your intention. And so, I know there's stuff out there that people want to be careful of, that people have embedded who knows what in. And so it's nice to get a good source.
Yeah, whenever I was recording those, I was trying really hard to make them sound as good as I could and intend that they could be used at any time in the future. And also in future recordings of the recording, not even necessarily live, and have exactly the intended effect in each instance. So all those intentions are in the recordings for sure.
Yeah.
And I just was happy to have a purpose for these nifty buttons on my mixer board that I previously wasn't using.
That's pretty cool.
I had like a badumch like on it for jokes, but I always forgot to use it. So this is
way cooler.
More
Well,
useful.
and just so you know, there is like a fuzziness when you talk now. So there, whatever the suppression was doing is somewhat. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll switch it back.
You can hear the tones well, but yeah, you might want to only use it when you're doing those. But it's really cool.
Learning how to do it.
It sounds so beautiful. I'm sure everyone out there is vibing with it as well. Yeah. Someone said, "Damn,
Right
that was deep." Illuminati said, "Very trippy." Said, "Get dagger." Got my dog's attention too. That's cool. Laura Taylor said.
Oh, my pets love the tuning forks. I have one cat that if I'm ever laying down doing it and I don't shut the door to keep him out, he's crawling all over me and trying to like rub his head on the fork.
Give me more.
Yeah, they're definitely into it. But it makes me, someone said it was trippy. I think the first time I ever encountered any form of sound healing, I was probably on some form of probably MDMA in my early 20s at a music festival. And this dude I know, Sergeant Hits is what he goes by. I don't even know his real name. Has a gong spaceship. And it's like, it's like a geodesic dome tent with a circle of gongs.
That's right.
And he travels around the country taking it places. And he puts a bunch of youngins into the gong circle, and you close your eyes and he goes for like, I don't know, 5 or 10, 15 minutes. And you just sit there meditating surrounded by these incredible gongs, and they play other types of devices too around the space. There's like a whole, spaceship crew. And it just blew my mind because I kept going back and taking people to it. Like, we got to do the gongs. We got to do the gongs. Donate the money. Because they'd do it for free.
Wow.
They'd ask for $5, but they'd let you in either way.
No matter what.
Yeah. And I would just go on these like crazy inner journeys and flying through portals of light, all kinds of stuff whenever I sat in the gongs. And that was when I was first opening up to like extended consciousness experiences to begin with. And, really grateful for that.
Big boost.
Yeah. I wonder how many people got into singing bowls or things of that nature from that guy. Pretty cool.
Once you experience something like that you can't deny, whether it's drug accentuated or not, that's it, right? And this is why experience is so important, because we can read about all we want, we can think about all we want, we can listen to podcasts all we want, but until you actually do it and feel it and know, oh my god, that actually happened, like this is a real thing, and now you can never unknow that. Unfortunately, you can go into denial. Some people do, but for most of us, now we know forever.
Yeah, we know that wholeness is always just a tone away.
And it's really under.
That was like a play on words of like a town away. But not very obvious one.
And we know it's just amazing, because I think it's so easy to say like, well, yeah, it makes you kind of feel cool, or you might like see stuff and your eyes are closed or whatever, but like, what's it actually doing? Well, it's actually doing, like you said, Eileen Day McCusick has compiled all of this, and many people that she's gathered research from have supported this on the material level, that things are actually improving and becoming more coherent, and people are experiencing all kind of healing, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, all of it, and I would add spiritual, even though you can't measure that.
Yeah, you brought up migraines already, but I've specifically used the sonic slider we're going to talk more about now on migraines, and watch them become manageable, and then over time basically go away. Whereas the person I'm thinking of before, if they got a migraine, they'd be done till the next day for sure. Mm-hmm. So part of the cool thing about sound healing is once that life force is returned and you're energized, it's not right then and done. The effect actually builds up over time, to the extent that you can even generate like healing crises.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, like where detox events, and you actually might even become a little more ill than when you started. But that's like the character, the awesome gnome in the Neverending Story says, it's got to hurt to heal.
Got to hurt if it's to heal. Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I think people kind of get scared off of a lot of healing modalities because of this. And it's the same if you do any cleanse, you're probably gonna have weird symptoms happen. And then if you're not with, someone or with the understanding already who's guiding you to understand that this is your body dumping toxins, this is your body getting rid of old harms and old hurts and healing yourself, and it does hurt sometimes, and you do purge sometimes, and you do have weird symptoms. And it's really interesting. My first cleanse I ever did when I was maybe like 24 or something, I don't know, a while ago, I had this one really specific symptom, and my naturopath is such a cool lady. She was teaching me, when was the last time you had that symptom? And I was like, this has only ever happened to me one other time. And she was like, well, what was that time? And I was like, I was really high on crystal meth. I'd probably been up for like 3 days. So I was at like my kind of limit for me. And I was so cold, and I was sitting in front of a heater just like shivering and like rocking back and forth with all these blankets on, and everyone was just off like doing whatever. And I was like, I might die right now. And all my body like shriveled up. My bones became really obvious. It's like my skin like sucked down onto my body, and I just got weird and gaunt, and my skin turned really, really like white and just got like cracked and dry looking, and I was freezing cold. Same thing happened to me like 12 years later, whatever, when I was 20, whatever, doing this cleanse. And I freaked out and called her. I was like, I don't know what's happening. And she reminded me, like, think back, when did this happen? And I was told her when it was. She's like, yeah, so right now your body is cleaning some of the damage you did on that drug, like, section of life. And I was like, whoa, like my body is amazing. My body like stored some of that because I couldn't deal with it back then, and then brought it out at this cleanse because it finally could. Anyway, suffice to say, that's a scary thing if you don't have someone like her helping you understand what your body's doing and that it's actually positive and that you're actually healing. Otherwise, you'd be like, I'm never doing this again, right? But you do. You want to heal. You want to get it out.
Yeah, but that can definitely scare people off of whatever modality whenever they experience that crisis. And there's potential to, that's why it helps to have somebody to guide through some of these processes if they're going to be heavy duty on the cleansing, because you can push too far or detox in a not good order.
True.
And generally your body knows not to let go of or try to process trauma, damage, or toxicity that it doesn't have the energetic capacity for. But when you stimulate your body to do these things with an external agency, then the feedback loop is being altered that your body would normally be using to determine whether or not it's going to activate one pathway or channel or the next. So the sonic slider, I just had that up, pictures of it. There's a lot of attachments for it. The frequency is 93.96. I won't say hertz because I don't like that designation.
Cycles.
It's a family name, but it is cycles per second. You could just call it cycles. We need a better word for it. But it's the 12th harmonic of the Schumann resonance, which you already brought up. The background frequency of the earth times 12, the average of it, times 12 is the frequency that Eileen landed on for the slider, which she said she tried out a bunch of different frequencies before she landed on that one, and it felt like the best one. If there was one fork out there for self-work, in my opinion, this is the one. It's not terribly expensive. I think you can do like installment payments, and there are attachments that are a variety of different attachments you can get. They go on the bottom because when you use this fork, you are actually using the bottom part of the fork to, like, my entire skull's vibrating right now. Feels great. And one of the things that we were just getting into, like how detox can sometimes be too intense or overly stimulated. There are this isn't to turn people off, but just like full disclosure, at this point, I've now encountered like literally only 2 cases of somebody doing harm with a weighted tuning fork. And in my opinion, the person probably, their body might have gave them clues that they were pushing too far before this happened. But just suffice to say, I would not recommend overly vibrating parts of your skull or around your jaw that are going to significantly vibrate teeth or molars. Not that I think that for most people that would even be a problem. And it's actually really great for relieving TMJ symptoms.
I was gonna say I kind of
But
go hard in this area because I'm like, this is where I need it a lot. So I spend a
well, and
lot of
if that
time
works
there.
for you, then it's probably just totally fine. But like if it did start to bring discomfort to like a molar or a tooth, that is a sign that don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. But otherwise, generally, I think it's totally safe. I just wanted to bring up that disclaimer because that's how powerful this is, that if something is janky in there, that this could shake things loose beyond, like if a tooth needs to go eventually, that might have been the case. Like if someone actually had to have a tooth extracted because of damage from the sonic slider, it was probably already damaged to the point where it was going to happen at some point or another.
I would
But
guess that. That seems intuitively true to me too. But anyway.
but that's, you know, this is all just to like remind people that we should always listen to our body. Another way to use the slider, there's really no end of ways, but you already kind of showed it. You can use this middle section, and that's actually why it's called a slider. And you'll even notice when you're doing it that it'll stick on some parts where there's nothing sticky to stick to. And that's sort of like your field showing you where there's a groove that needs a little attention to bring to coherence. And one of my favorite new ways to use the slider is actually on the reflexology points on the bottom of my feet.
That's so cool.
And it's almost like I don't even use it on other parts of the body that much now, because after I discovered that, because it was so wildly effective. I'm somebody that has occasional like solar plexus constriction, not shortness of breath, but like sometimes I can't take as full and deep a breaths as I should be able to. And it's always like I think it's part of my human design. It's just a way that I constrict my energy in states of dissonance. Like it's my go-to way to self-sabotage, I guess. I don't know. But I didn't want to like put a slide in here for this because I don't know enough about it to be sure that like a random thing I pulled off a Google image search was 100% accurate. But people can research and do image searches for foot reflexology points, and you can use like even massage and just pressure on those points to stimulate. But with the slider, I will put it right in, like, if this is where your toes are right here, this is like the middle top section of your foot where that first like crease happens, right in that point would be where the solar plexus reflex point is at. I use it for like if my heart rate is ever feeling a little off, I'll use it on the heart spot. And I've noticed the results of like calming, but also improving the flow or the breath capacity or lowering the heart rate are within a minute. It's like, it's wild how fast it just resets the biorhythms to a better state. So Eileen's got an entire process she calls a sonic meridian flush, where you have somebody laying on a table and methodically I hate the word expert, but in a knowledgeable way, you stimulate all the organs and meridians of the body with two people each using one of these forks, one on each foot of the person, so that they're synchronizing the stimulation of different detox pathways. That's why they call it the flush, because it actually is like a viable detox modality to cause your body to let go of stuff that it's holding on to. And that's why I say, do that with some knowledge, or do one thing at a time. If you don't have the knowledge, that's probably the easiest way to go about it. Like today I'm going to stimulate liver, but not also everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And probably the same rules would apply to the order you would do cleansing on a dietary level and on a fasting level, in terms of the order you would want to approach flushing organs with sonic slider stimulation. But it's definitely wild. Like this one tool could be used for pain management, for healing injuries. I actually got it because of a shoulder injury I had from rock climbing, where I couldn't even raise my arm I couldn't raise it higher than here. Wow. It was just like no range of motion. It hurt when I got to right here. And within a day, with the first day I got the slider, the pain was diminished enough from short use that I could get like 80% motion.
Wow.
And within the week, I was back to 100% motion. And then I kept doing it for a couple weeks and then started getting into lifting and dealing with the atrophied muscle of that area. Cause I kid you not, and I'd quit climbing for over a year because of the injury, but that's how long I'd been like dealing with it and trying to find ways to, I was like, what's the right stretch? Like, how can I stretch this? Or, and you know, that type of area, there isn't a lot of stretching that helps with it. And this maybe results depend on the user, but for me, I'm back to 100% with that arm. And I can almost kind of feel like a scar tissue in there. Like I know the injury still existed in my past, but it no longer discomforts me or stops me from doing anything. So there's a lot of really awesome applications for that tool. And I feel like it's kind of a miracle tool, like a one size fits all approach to a whole bunch of different problems.
Truly. I mean, you think again about like the form that your body already knows and wants to fit the function that it has and the various functions that it has. And this is just like a way to like call it back to itself. You know, it's like a homing beacon. Like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going. Which we all can relate to on a level too, because we've all been called back by various things in our own consciousness. And we're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. You know, it's the same sort of thing, I feel like. And it's not magic, you know, like we've said a couple times, there's all of this, you know, materialist scientific evidence of you know, frequency and vibration being used to affect physical form and physical function in positive and effective ways and in negative ways. You know, this is something that interacts with each other on various levels, and we know that. And then we can just add our intuitive and our energetic understanding of it as well in a spiritual sense, in a consciousness sense, and expand upon that. Like, we don't have to stay limited to just those materialist scientist findings.
What's cool though is when we're really taking a balanced approach to reality, then the physical and the metaphysical reflect each other perfectly, and
Always.
you can find
like always.
I mean, you'll never dig down to the bottom of reality and find the canvas everything is painted on. It's void and empty space. But that's part of the plasma idea, is that it's the energy move, it's the movement through the space in a way that is the plasma. So I'm going to show some before and afters I pulled off the internet of people using the slider.
Cool.
There's some pretty good ones.
Wow.
You can really see that effect I was talking about of energy spilling out in the form of like people's faces kind of sagging or drooping, getting distorted. The bottom left is Eileen like 10 years ago, and then Eileen a year or two ago.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
How much of a difference it made for her. So it's actually marketed largely as like a beauty tool, which, you know, makes sense, but it's a good way to get their foot in the door for people who aren't even interested in these topics. And once you help them get more coherence, even if they were doing it for the reason of wanting to look better, then you've still got more coherence, and everything's going to change from that.
Yeah, I noticed that when I bought it, that there was a lot of like the literature she sends with is about like how to use it in areas to like tone yourself and look better. And I'm like, that is cool, but I also and I understood that is the way to get people. That's what people want. But yeah, the added benefits beyond that they maybe don't even know about, like, worth it.
Yeah, I have probably more slides to fit into 45 minutes than is possible, but I don't actually think we need to touch on all of them. This is sort of material I did somewhere else, but it didn't get to stick around. So refreshing my mind, I was looking through the slideshow. There are other cool modalities we can look at. These are probably not that foreign to a lot of us. But besides tuning forks, you could get into singing bowls, which I think are, when they're made in the traditional way, it's quite amazing to imagine that somebody at one point figured out the exact shape and dimensions and process to turn metal into a vibratory tool to bring harmony. I mean, this is a super old practice. I think the authentic ones, the knowledge is passed like master to apprentice from in like a oral training way. I don't think you could go find out how to make these if you weren't part of the lineage.
Yeah, and they're beautiful sounding. They're like hammered by hand, which is crazy to me to think that you could get something so acoustically. But I guess that's where we used to do that with everything, that we made it by hand, right? It's only however long that we've had things that are machine made, and every single one is like exactly the same. And but it's really cool. It's got its own richness to it. I think is really important.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine that no matter how experienced the builder of those bowls is, you could never make really two that were the same. They
Yeah.
would definitely have a unique identity, each one to another.
I think about that too. And I know I talked about like talking to our tools, but I think about that when I'm using my bowl too. I'm like, you're the only one of you that's ever going to live.
I've got a big bowl down here. I guess I'll grab it.
Yeah, grab it. Yeah, and the tool too that came with mine at least is like different than a lot of the ones I've seen. And I don't know if it's more authentic, but I got to choose my type of wood and everything, and it's a cool. Ooh.
Mine's a more mass-produced one, but even those are still useful.
Yeah.
And they make these out of crystal. That's pretty wild.
The crystal ones look really fun. But I heard, someone say that the crystal is more like a trendy thing, and that this, like you were talking about, the traditional singing bowls are maybe even better and richer. And I was thinking about that in the Rupert Sheldrake's, I talk about this all the time and I'm forgetting the word now, morphogenetic fields, that after all those, how many thousands of years that they've been making it in this way, and that's passed down hand to hand and mouth to mouth, that has its own energetic field to it, and that the crystal ones being so much newer, that's really cool to have crystal, and maybe there's a different value to that, but that there is something in that tradition that is also really valuable and irreplaceable and irreproducible.
Yeah, the crystal ones are hella expensive too.
True. Yeah.
I don't know how expensive, but somebody's making a nice profit off of that. And I don't know if those are still mass produced, even though they're crystal. I don't even know how the heck you would turn a crystal into a singing bowl. But at the end of the day, it's like there's a bunch of options. And if people feel attracted more to one or the other, that's great. Or even just using your voice. Here's some images of bells and chimes. These are traditionally used in meditative practices all the time. And I bet that you'll agree with this, but I find that helpful non-physical forces actually will communicate with me anyway, with the sounds of bells and chimes, that in like a clairaudience way. I don't know if you ever get that.
What should I say? My bells now are inside, and I use them to communicate my intention outward, but I have used it that other way around, especially when they're outside and the wind, who is my friend, can help bring messages through them, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. For whatever reason, the way that things work for me is sometimes when there's something that I need to pay attention, like a moment where I need to pay attention, and hey, this is important right here. I'll get on the left side of my head, it'll sound like somebody just rung a bell right next to my ear, like right outside of it.
That's awesome.
And I've eventually figured out that was supposed to mean, hey, pay attention to this. This is an important moment. This is synchronicity, or there's something about this.
I love that you share things like that, because I think a lot of people, we look so much to like the way things have always been done, or being taught by a teacher, or this is the way, or you like throw the sticks and when they land like this, it means this, and all these different things. And those are all valuable. Just like the bowl we were talking about, they've got their own morphogenetic value and field, and that's powerful, and it can't be understated. But it also can't be understated that you can develop your methods on your own in whatever way comes to you or works with you best, and you figured that out for yourself, right? No one came to you and was like, Chance, listen, sometimes in life there's going to be this tone. You just, right? Like, you just did that. And I have similar things for myself too, and I'm always trying to encourage people, but it's hard without those examples, and that's a really good example to encourage people to look for. How does spirit, or whatever you call things, communicate with you? How do you get messages? How does your inner self give you these things? Because sometimes it's going to be a little sound that you hear.
Yeah, and I think this is a choose your own adventure type of game we're playing. So, and we're all different. there's no reason why all of us would have the same way of communicating with guides or with deeper parts of ourselves.
Exactly.
And Lindsay in the chat, Lindsay Smith said, we ring an Amish maid bell given to me by my grandmother before saying our bedtime prayers with my children. We call it calling the angels.
I love that. Her family is so
Awesome.
amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff going on in the chat. Rachel shared some really crazy chalice singing bowls.
Dude, I was talking not that long ago. I had this dream. A lot of information comes to me in Dream World and a lot of work happens there, but I was led to find this hidden historical thing that I was understanding was a glass arm. And I was like, what the hell is a glass arm? And I woke up looking for it because I knew it was a message, and I went and found this glass harmonica, which was this hidden, lost musical tool of history, which I feel like has this exact potential that we're talking about with this musical tones and healing, because people basically attributed the effects of it to the devil and cast it off, and no one was ever allowed to use the glass harmonica again. But Benjamin Franklin used it. We know that he's occult and, alchemical and all of these things, and all of these people felt like maybe you could contribute or communicate with dead spirits, or felt like you could heal people with it or make people sick, which we were just talking about. Sometimes when you're healing, some sickness, some symptoms come out, and all of these things. And I'm like, man, we need to bring back the glass harmonica and study it, because I know it's all of these tones in one instrument that you can like play many at once. You could do the binaural thing, like you could do all kinds of stuff with it. Pretty cool little resurgence in my brain there.
I play harmonica sometimes.
It's not a harmonica.
Oh.
It's an harmonica.
What is that?
Exactly. My dream was like, go find this. And I was like, okay. And it does this to me sometimes where it's like, go find this book. And I go find the book and buy it. And it's like exactly what I need. But I'll show you guys on the screen. I'll screen share it so that you can see it too. Chance.
I was just reviewing information on like psychic vampirism for the show I did earlier today on it. And one of the things that I came across that I didn't share in that episode was in Dr. Joel Slate's book about psychic vampirism. He describes different type of ways that your dreams can inform you about your relationship to vampires or your safety from them. And basically he described like the exact type of dream that you just said, where some solution comes to you magically in a dream. That's basically like, that's top tier level of like psychic self-defense and personal coherence and empowerment whenever you have experiences like that. So
yeah,
good to hear.
This is lifelong, and this story I'm sharing here about the harmonica that hopefully everyone can see now is like the smallest example of this for me. But I just wanted to share with people because it came to me for a reason, and I'm trying to share it with as many people as possible because I feel like someone out there needed to hear it more than me. And also because look at it, it's so cool. Why did we get rid of that? And you can find very few, but there are actually YouTube videos of people playing this, and it is beautiful. It reminds me of organs in the old churches. It's like this rich, deep, resonant sound, and it's all of these notes at once, and has to do with water and crystal. And how could that go wrong? Like water, crystal, glass is like a type of crystal, right? And a liquid all at once, and all of these things together with like your intention. And I'm sure those people were right. I don't think it's a tool of the devil, but I'm sure there was healings. I'm sure there was communication with other entities and forces going on, like all kinds of stuff.
I would like to volunteer to be the person who needed to hear about this, because this is totally new to me. It's
awesome.
Really cool.
It's just funny because in my dream,
I've got tabs open on it now for later.
I try to share with people too that like when I'm getting messages from people, sometimes this happens too, where I'm like, I don't know, it's like this, like I don't know what that is actually. And so in my dream, I was like, glass arm. And it was like, kind of, just go look, you'll find it. And I was like, what is a glass arm? Like, and then I woke up and typed in glass arm, and I found glass harmonica. And I was like, okay, that's what it was. Like, I knew instantly, but it was just funny because it couldn't tell me harmonica because I don't know what an harmonica is.
Gulag comes in handy when you search it sometimes with that autofill.
What just happened? Sorry, guys, the screen's going to look weird for a second because I lost my other window that I need.
How
All
dare
right.
you
I
compromise
sorry.
your production value?
Okay, sorry. I feel like I got us off track, so I don't know where
No,
we're
it's
at
super
now.
on track. I mean, we're free to go wherever we want here. But I thought if we are going to get onto a track, we can talk more about the biofield anatomy hypothesis, which I think people might be interested to know more about. But this isn't just Eileen's information. It might feel like I'm kind of coming all from one source here, but her book is just a really comprehensive gathering of it. And the biofield anatomy hypothesis, that actually is her hypothesis. It originates with her. Not that there's a biofield, but that it has a structure to it that is common from person to person, which is very, very helpful to know about. We talk about it some in the episodes I've done with her, but I like to present it in this more introductory way because when I have interviewed her, we kind of go off into farther out topics because I don't want to be one of those hosts that's just like, okay, tell me your packaged information exactly how you've told it to everybody else every other time. I like to go in and create the episode for the people that already are into it and know about it. And so we go deeper, but we talk about some specific areas. Like in the most recent show with her, we talked about the world pain spot, which is a very interesting concept that whenever there is like mass suffering in the world over certain tragic events. She used the example of when Robin Williams offed himself, how a bunch of people were bummed out for a while about that. And there's actually like a spot in the biofield, I believe around the left shoulder, where like when that type of heavy energy from the group mind is too involved with us, like we are absorbing too much of it, our boundaries not right, we can get pain in a certain spot. I don't think it's exactly just the left shoulder. The left shoulder in general deals with like sadness type energy in some capacity, as far as I know. But anyway, I'm going to bring up this slide and read from it, and we'll go through a couple here to talk about this hypothesis and the anatomy, because it will then help me to explain a little bit more of the biofield tuning process as I understand it. I mean, I'm not trained, but she has trained probably thousands of people at this point in this hypothesis or this modality. And because the people she trains are able to report the same results back as she has when she works in with this mental scaffolding applied, it to me enforces that there's something accurate about it. And what we're seeing here is like fractal energy flow dynamics. So to read from a quote in Electric Body, Electric Health, her newest book, she says, in a nutshell, I believe that the human biofield is a diffuse electromagnetic medium, a bioplasma that surrounds and interpenetrates the body and stores the record of our life experiences. What we call mind and memory are actually inside this electromagnetic field. The information of everything that we've ever experienced and even what our ancestors experienced is encoded in standing wave format in the body's electromagnetic field, with specific areas holding specific types of experiences. In this model, your body is inside your mind rather than the other way around.
Which we all intuitively know that, right? And not that everything she said, but just that part of it. Our mind isn't in our body. Like it's somewhere, it's non-local, right? And around us is the best way to understand that. But it's like that soul, like you say, Chance, like ensouling, like the soul is coming in, to inhabit this space, not the other way around. This is just a focal point.
And Ginny in the chat says, the left side again. I wonder why the left side was demonized in hand dominance growing up. Well, in the biofield, the left side represents the feminine. So it could go back to that whole like Eve is the root of evil idea.
Well, and the way I said it is the same idea, but in different words, which is that the left side is where we receive from the source. So we're receptive. It's our feminine side. We take in information and energy through our left hand, our left foot into our self. And so you don't want us connected to that because you don't want us to be able to recharge. You don't want us to be able to get messages easily. You don't want us to receive all of that infinitude through us if you want to control us, right? So you have to demonize it and tell us it's bad.
Yeah. Now, one of the helpful things about the biofield anatomy hypothesis is that based on where issues in the field are found on the left or right side, you can actually make some inferences about whether or not the trauma that was involved, at least in the case of stuff that happened when someone was younger, comes from experience with their mother or father, because the majority of our experiences that shaped us, if our mother or father weren't directly the cause of the experience, they were involved in some way, even if something happened that wasn't them doing it, but then, their reaction to it or how they do or don't help or nurture for hard experiences. So the biofield is just another word for the aura at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But she describes it as an area that holds your inner genetic information, which is I think she made up that word, which is a great neologism. And she describes it as the tone of the song of our DNA. So not just the genetic, but the sort of the emotional tone of it. We inherit the emotional experiences and tonal qualities of our ancestors. So if we look at this is a simplified version of the chart. We can look at a more complex version after we kind of break down the basics here. But see the ring pattern here of these concentric circles. Basically, that's like a fractal like similarity to the rings of a tree. And as you move further away from the person's middle column out to the left or right, the tone of that area will be connected to the age that approximates that percentage away. So if you've got a field that is generally on average, people's field is about 6 feet off to the left and to the right for their personal bubble space. It actually does seem to go further if you are then looking at more subtle energies that are going into past life experiences. But for this current life, that bubble is like 6 feet on average. And so if you found an issue 3 feet off of the body and you were 30 years old, then it would be about the age of 15 that issue has its origin point. So that makes the ability to intuit things that are going on with the client or with yourself easier if you can draw a connection to a certain age. Like I was working with somebody who they were having their main problem was like their relationship with food, and they're getting ill because they weren't eating properly and also not energetically receiving the food because of this bad relationship to food. And in her field, I found some stickiness around the age of 12. And I asked her about it, and she goes, "Oh, actually," because we were working on this specific issue. And she was like, "Actually, that was when I first got my braces, and the, thief orthodontic surgeons masquerading as like helpful people who were really crooks just destroyed her jaw and her bite and constantly filled her mouth up with metals and uncomfortable things. And pretty much from the age of 12, when this process of being brutalized by bad orthodontics began, was the point where it began to be uncomfortable to eat for her. So that was actually like really helpful, because at that point she realized, oh, I think ever since the age of 12, every time I'm about to take a bite, I clench up and my whole body gets tense, because even if it doesn't hurt right now, my body is just entrained to the memory ever since that age of eating is uncomfortable or is going to hurt for some reason. Yeah. And it was like a badass breakthrough moment. Yeah. And it happened because I was like, think about the age of 12, Yeah. So that's part of why this is so useful.
It's really, this idea of that circle, around us that is the edge of that field, and that being the oldest, and then the closer in being the newest. It's like every time I've done this on anyone, it just nails it. Like it nails it. There's just like unstoppable. And I just also have like, I feel like I am trained by Eileen because I read her book and that's how I developed whatever I'm doing. But
I think it's enough to read her book if you're already like hip to
Trusting
healing.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's the other thing I was going to say is like you were talking about the tones and we were talking about everyone has their different way. Like since then, I've developed my own sort of like spin on things. And she talked about that a bit too, that everybody kind of feels it in a different way or kind of interprets it a different way or like kind of like has different sort of methods to it. But that general structure of hers, like that is just key. It's just so helpful. She's so cool.
That's how I've approached it too. I mean, I started with basically trying to imitate what she describes in the book. And then as I've gone on, new insights have come. I think that I absolutely will take like the training, the certification course at some point in my life when time and finances allow for it, because I want to support something and give back to it through that, but also to be able to spend time like dedicated working. It's not that I care about the quote unquote certification, but just to have that like valuable experience and a group of people learning together. And I think it could be really great. But
yeah, well, it's just like we were talking about with the one day of brightness. Like if everyone's coming there with that purpose and intention and you have a wise leader to help you answer questions and develop like you can't replace that.
no, and it seems to even work online without even having to be in person.
That's true.
To go further into the biofield anatomy, we can look at how states of mind that I'm reading from her book here again, another quote. States of mind we habitually energize create patterns of distortion in the field, which ultimately result in breakdowns of order and function in the body. The way that we restore wholeness from an electromagnetic perspective is by bringing these fragments of frozen light of forgotten self back into circulation and availability. Everything in your mind is a vibrational pattern within your energy field. So as the practitioner, although you might have the knowledge of how this field is laid out, and you can see on the right side of the crown chakra, it has to do with thinking about the past. And think about that on a metaphysical level. The crown chakra, Chronos, the father or the masculine aspect of time would be history and record keeping, whereas the feminine is future, the feminine is generative, right? So on the right side of the crown, if you have a distortion there, the person could be stuck thinking about the past. And then if you nail that into how far away from the crown it is, you can even tell them what age they're thinking about, what they're stuck thinking about, you know?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's quite amazing. Now, on the other hand, worrying about the future, it doesn't go the same way you'd think. Like, well, how can you be worrying about the future as a 12-year-old or something? Like, how can you worry about the future of being 12? It's not like that. You would interpret that more like there's something that you've been worrying about since you were 12 that is future oriented, perhaps, or your intuition will give you, more clear information in the moment. And you can just talk to the person you're working with too and be like, okay, I have some clues, but like, can you help me work this out? And then you're just like unlocking doors in their mind of things that they know deeply, but they've not let themselves think about it. They've closed away. That's literally what compartmentalization or, frozen light in your field is. It's that which you're fully aware of it, but you have created a mental architecture that allows you to completely ignore it all the time. As soon as you bring it back to consciousness, that's like the first step of feeling a change about it. So
And
as you go down
can I
the
mention really
chakras
quick?
here.
So,
Oh yeah, please do.
just like we were talking about with cleansing, in my little crystal meth story, emotions and memories are the same exact way. So like when my physical body could not actually deal with some of the toxicity of the drugs that I was pounding into it, it literally hid some of those toxins away somewhere for a later date to process them. So that would be like a stuck energy place too. That would be like a negative crystallization or freezing of this physical matter. And so on the energetic, it's the same, right? Back in that place, there's this little tucked away, like hardened shell around some energy that could not be processed or released or flowed through at that time. And you go back to it and you time travel back to it to release it and help it flow again. It's the same concept.
Yeah. And we shouldn't even look at it as like a bad thing. Messed up. I've got this frozen light in my field. It's actually
You needed it.
a natural process. There's a layer of self that is a protective part
Yeah.
And its entire job is to basically be totally omniscient and decide on the fly for you what you can and can't handle without totally freaking out, melting down, or just flat out dying.
Yeah. Your body is
And
your friend and your soul is your friend, and they're doing things to help you.
yeah, and sometimes that protective part is the reason why it's difficult to get to the root of problems. And so knowing that that aspect of yourself exists, the protective part, when you go into any healing practice, you can actually talk to yourself and say, all right, I am speaking to the protective layer of myself, and I'm asking my highest self to also hear this message and facilitate my request, which is I feel ready and that it's time to encounter things that are stuck within me. And I would like to give permission to the protective part of myself to let these things come to consciousness in whatever way will work out. Right. And highest self can direct that process and go, okay, we'll do this, but you're still not ready for that. You can actually, you can communicate with these aspects of self, and instead of, because I don't want people to see like the protective part that hides things away as some secret keeper or sabotager.
Yeah.
It's definitely all there to do something to keep you in homeostasis. And you might know that you have time to encounter difficulties with homeostasis. Like you said, when you cleansed, you were getting cold and shivering again.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm setting aside time for cleansing. So it's actually appropriate and okay. So
Yes.
you give permission to that. Anyway, we don't have to run through the whole thing, but
That's a great point.
This chart is pretty amazing. It shows you the way that these flavors go, and you can see that they're lined up with the chakra system. And just to fully explain the process here, you are sweeping the tuning fork through the person's field on the left and right, waiting till you feel a sticky part or hear a tonal change. This is part of what makes it like you make it your own, because different practitioners are going to experience this differently. Like you might be the type that really needs to hear the tone to know whether or not it's changing. And you're sweeping, you hear the change, you hold there for a moment, your intention becomes like the click of a mouse, and you click on that and you drag it back to the core. And the idea is that you're just reintegrating this frozen energy back to the central column, where it will go into the appropriate vortex and return to circulation in your whole system instead of being stuck out on the side. And sometimes that will involve you having spontaneous, many people have spontaneous memories come up when I do the tuning on them. But other times it'll just be like, it doesn't necessarily need you to remember consciously for the energy to go back to the core, so that it can come about in different ways. Like one thing that was neat was I recently was at a loud event at a booth at a healing arts festival, and they had a music stage nearby. And I got a chance to practice biofield tuning on people in an environment where I can almost not even hear the fork.
Yeah.
And definitely they can't hear it very well until I get it pretty close to their head. And I had the same results as in a quiet, solitary room in my house on a massage table. Having them sit in a lawn chair by a loud stage, I could still click and drag and find the sticky spots. But what was cool about that was because I wasn't able to rely on hearing, it actually brought me deeper into intuition. And what happened was my hand would literally just like move or stick on its own as if it was on a string. I've had other experiences like that before. Qigong is one example where when I'm really in the practice, I think I described this at One Day of Brightness, but when I'm really in flow with it, it's just my breath that I'm controlling, and the energy balls that I'm building, expanding or contracting, my hands are being pushed with the energy ball, and my breath is what's modulating the size of it. And it becomes like, it's not like automatic writing, it's like automatic movement. It's a similar deal. And that's a superpower we have. And the forks help me unlock a level of that by using them in loud places.
I love the level of trust you have in yourself, which is a testament to how much time you've spent with yourself to be able to do that sort of thing. 'Cause I think, again, that a lot of people might listen to this excuse me, and see to themselves like, oh, well, Chance and Lindsay, Eileen, like they can do it, but I can't do it. And like, no, anybody can do it. And it's just like anything, you'd have to spend some time with it and some time with yourself, and learning to trust yourself and interact with yourself and sit with yourself in those ways is its own beautiful practice and healing for you too. So you're getting, just like any good thing, you're getting as much as you're giving in this always. I think it's really amazing in that way too.
Yeah, if one other way that I do remote sessions, especially if I don't have the table to set up, whoever it is, I'll just tell them the time that we're doing it, and I'll literally just do a session on myself with the intention that it's also being received by them, and I'll get the same result. It's like all healing is self-healing. It's the only thing you can do.
I'll tell you a secret. For me, I draw a picture of a little person and their circle, and I just do it in miniature, and it works exactly the same.
That's so cool.
It's like the best voodoo doll in the world.
Wow, that actually gives me some ideas. Yeah, you could like just draw the pencil
in my house. You know, you haven't seen my house. I tell people though, it's like 700 square feet, and it is packed because Johnny is a creative genius, and I'm doing all these things, and we have like 1,000 things we're doing. So every single nook and cranny we have is like utilized and full, and so I have to figure it out, and that's how that came about. But it works.
I'm with you. Yeah, my space is kind of similar.
Have you done it on your animals? I know you said they came up and like liked it, but have you like tried to like work with them with it?
I've used the weighted tuning fork on them plenty of times.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think one time I even did it for my dog when he got a mild injury during playtime. And it's probably like animals definitely love the vibrations. I mean, maybe they wouldn't like a really loud fork being struck right by their sensitive ears, but generally they seem to like it. I think we're probably not going to fit everything I had in, but also some of it would be rehashing topics we've actually already talked about specifically. So I'll just go through so that we can move towards like closing thoughts. I'll go to related subjects here. There's a lot of subjects to relate to this: electric universe theory, plasma physics, soul retrieval, because this is just a different way of doing soul retrieval at the end of the day.
It absolutely is.
Hypnosis, ego state therapy. That might be something I touch on specifically for like a minute or two, because I want to point people towards that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Past life regression, psychic vampirism, old world cathedrals, and organite, Reich tech. Those are all related topics. Come down and skip ahead, but well, let's look at this cathedral slide just because it's a good looking slide. We already brought this up.
Yeah.
But just look at this stuff. Are cathedrals cathodes? Do pipe organs influence your body's organs? These are good questions to lead people down. And channels like John Levi and Michelle Gibson are really good examples to look at to learn more.
So beautiful.
But a book that I just brought up when I said ego state therapy is this really good book by Thomas Zinser called Soul Centered Healing. This is a screenshot from inside the book where he shows the architecture of soul, which is it very much, you can tie it into Eileen's work, but he was doing hypnotherapy with people and trying to get to the bottom of like, what is an attachment? What is an alter personality? He was working with schizophrenic people specifically, and he discovered, actually through a channeled entity, that his secretary approached him and said, his secretary approached him in the 80s and said, hey, when I was a kid, there's this like imaginary friend I had. And the other day, all of a sudden I was writing in my journal and he started talking to me through automatic writing.
That's right.
And he said he wanted to talk to you. And so he got into this conversation with an entity called Jared, who helped him understand all the different layers of the self. That's where that concept of the protective part of self that I brought up comes from, is his description of it. And he learned to work with what ego states are basically those frozen light packets that I talked about being stuck in your field. They actually, what's wild about it is, like, this is part of why I believe that consciousness, energy is consciousness, right?
Right.
Because these frozen parts of yourself actually, at least according to work by people like Zinser, who have dealt with ego states, what they're called, they found that everybody's actually got literally in a psychic realm other versions of themselves that have an existence and live in a type of like Groundhog Day psychic loop of the day or the general time period where they're traumatized. So what is important about this is that these ego states are not just holding on to your trauma, they're holding on to other parts of you too that are connected to that time period. Like for me, as an example, I didn't know about it, ego states, as like a conceptualization, but at one point in my mid 20s, I found the part of myself that was the kid who liked to draw and make art.
Yeah.
And basically I found like the trauma of what made me, there were multiple levels of this. And there was like a second grader version of me. There was a 17-year-old version of me. One was related to like drawing and the other was related to making music. And anyway, these parts of me, I had managed to make myself forget most of those times of my life at that age, all as a way of justifying and locking away my creativity based on the belief that I can't be creative because I'm not creative, or people will judge my bad art, or whatever the case may be. Another example of how it could work is you might have a bad experience as a child where like a dog attacked you, or you saw a dog do something vicious and you don't realize it, but you have an unconscious reaction every time a large dog comes around. And you might even start to notice the reaction and be like, where is this coming from? It's irrational. Well, you might have, in this example, you might have an ego state or a past version of yourself that has been frozen in light or put into a compartment and kept in that box, and it holds on to the difficult experience, but it also, like I said, it holds on to other parts of you as well. And it's not just like a memory that's locked away. It actually, in the psychic space, is a living being, not even like a tulpa, but like it's a conscious entity. It is literally a self of its own. Like it has an experience of existing. And that's what that book, Soul-Centered Healing, helps describe, so we can integrate, because integration isn't really about like dissolving those parts of ourself. It is about embracing them, but it's more like recognizing them and then like dialoguing with them, helping them understand where they're at and what they are too. It's like, it's a little complicated, but also simple. It's a really good book.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that. He gets into like attachments as a totally different category than ego states, and then full on alter personalities, which is like the next level of ego states. But it's really fascinating work.
It's really fascinating for me doing, especially when I'm doing ceremony and healing for people, because the stages in which it goes are basically like what he is describing too. Like there's soul retrieval that happens that is like parts of yourself that you've locked away or created as separate from yourself, and that has to come back to wholeness. And then there's these attachments, and then there's other things, and there's just these layers, and all of that healing can occur in one ceremony, but they're all of that same thing. And it's the same with the tuning fork that we're talking about too, where you're really, what you're doing is getting it, bringing it back in and getting it to realign and reflow, reaccept it. And like you said too, it doesn't even always have to be conscious, although some of it does have to be conscious. And that's another piece of it. But it's just interesting, like how all these different ways around it reinforce each other and have like the same characteristics, you know, as one another without even knowing it, I think.
That's how you know you're onto something, whenever there's that fractality.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is a different way of looking at it, and it's its own thing, but it's also just like this other thing that's a totally different thing.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, there's a great quote here for my next slide. Once we open up to the flow of energy within our body, we can also open up to the flow of energy in the universe. There's a lot to that statement, but he's basically pointing out that like once you get the dynamics of energy in one area, you will begin to see it everywhere, because everything is one energy. It's one life, one existence, and we're a part of that.
And that's another thing too that people are like, well, I wanna get my own spiritual skills, and I want to do this and that. And I'm always like, well, this is how you heal yourself. Yeah, the more whole you are, and the more healed you are, the more these things just happen, because it's actually a function of being you, of your soul and your body. These are just things it does. But we have all kinds of injuries and harms and distractions in the way. And you just gotta bring it all back together.
Yeah, Reich called it emotional plague. And in my research on psychic vampirism, I find that that's actually what it is, that the vampirism actually does infect like a virus. It is actually pathogenic. And just to scoot back a couple of slides to one I skipped.
Yeah.
It's very small at the bottom here, but you can see some Kirlian photography of like a healthy aura and a constricted aura. And we've talked about some psychic vampirism stuff, but in the aura photography, the heavy duty vampires, their aura is totally black, but then there's like a blacker than there's a part that's blacker than the background of these tentacles that are coming out of the aura. And according to Slate and his research, these tentacles go out and puncture the aura of their host victims. And not only does that initiate the draining, but it also puts the vampire energy into the person's aura. So it's gross stuff, but like the key to being safe from psychic vampirism is to have a coherent energy field.
Blam.
And I had some slides in here of Mitch's Orgonite, but you've already talked to Mitch, so we don't have to go too much into that. But people, if you haven't heard Lindsay's or my talks with Mitch, the organ donor, that dude is a firecracker. Love that guy.
And he's changing the world, and his army of helpers is changing the world too. I love it.
Yeah, Ryan from my Telegram group was just showing me a big box of earth pipes that he got from Mitch today that he's going to go gifting. And I was like, man,
so cool.
I had one of those moments where like, if I didn't do my podcast, this guy would not be out putting earth pipes at 5G towers.
Yeah, that's
and
so
not
cool.
like that I did it, but that like it's so cool to facilitate that and to know that there are ripples that I don't even have a clue happening from our work. You know, you have the same thing going on. We sit here and we just do our thing, and we have no idea some of the things that are resulting from that. It's so awesome.
That is really true and good to remember.
So the last part we'll go through here is, these are very basic and obvious, but it is never can have too many reminders. Ways to raise your voltage, which is like, besides tuning forks, things you can do to improve your coherence and get enough rest, breathe more deeply, get grounded, as in go stand with bare feet on the ground, like for sure. Eat whole, pure, fresh foods, drink spring water. That's one I've been incorporating lately, because before I was doing just filtered water, and getting spring water is a little harder, but I've noticed that over time I'm seeing improvements from that particular habit change. Yeah. Now, this is a big one. Consciously receive love, gratitude, and appreciation. Because a lot of us are just hardcore givers, but like whenever you are getting appreciated, sometimes our reaction is to like, oh, no, I'm not that great, or I don't deserve that, or because you know all your flaws and they aren't thinking of those. They're just trying to show you love. Yeah. Receive it consciously and like, don't block it from yourself. Hang out with electron donors, not electron stealers. That's another way of saying avoid psychic vampires. Allow your emotions to flow through you rather than suppressing them. Tap into the power sound, get out in nature, laugh. Man, that's a big one for me, because I spend so much time alone. I really don't laugh as much as I used to, which you might find surprising, but like I need more laughter in my life. So people, when you share good memes in the Telegram chat, I appreciate it. Honor your natural inclinations. Choose things that make you go, ah, instead of, ugh. Avoid chemically scented products. That's a big one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's one. It's quickly becoming like the new smoking in terms of all the research coming out about how bad those things are.
So gross.
Soak up the sun. That's the last one. And we got through it all like right in 2 hours. So that's pretty cool. Good for me. Usually I go over.
Yeah, well, and we have that potential, but I really love that list at the end. And like you said, some of it's like things we hear a lot or say a lot, but there's some of those, even if we say it and hear it a lot, that we're still not doing very regularly. And that's another thing when people are like, I want to amp up, I want to increase my ability or whatever, I want to like live more truly. I'm like, these are literally the ways. If you're not already doing those, not to say you can't also go do other things, but that's just like the best foundation to have. And so I really love those reminders. But that receiving love thing, like you said, is really key. And most of us don't do it enough. And it's really easy to do while you're grounding, especially if the sun's out or whatever, or you're just in a comfortable outside place and your feet are on the ground, because the earth loves you and the sun loves you and the air loves you. And you can just breathe and feel and connect with all of that at one time while you're grounding, and like just let it fill you. Just be like, yep, I'm loved. Yep, this is awesome. I'm filling up. But your response to that, and then remind people where to find you and where to go. I think everyone here knows, but just in case.
Sure. Just for the record, in case it wasn't clear, that I have taken a lot of info from the book Electric Body, Electric Health. That list is from the back of that book. So,
oh, rad.
Don't call me a plagiarist later or whatever. I'm just sharing what I found useful out of it, but there's a lot more to it. That book is phenomenal, the newer one. I mean, her older one's good too, but if you're going to read one of the two, Electric Body, Electric Health, at the very least, you get a good education on what the chakras really are doing or how they work in your body. And there's plenty of salty and sweet in it, and it's very well rhythmed, and it's a good read. So I hope people check that out. And yeah, you can find me at innerversepodcast.com, on Rockfin as well. On Patreon, you can get my premium content too, but Patreon, boo, they censor people, they deplatform people. They just kicked Beth off the other day.
Ugh.
Beth Martins, because she live streamed a medical freedom rally, and she did on YouTube, didn't post it on Patreon, but when YouTube gave her the channel strike, Patreon also they called it unlaunching instead of, censoring and deleting. They said, your channel has been unlaunched.
We didn't kill you. We liberated you from your body. Like, I hate them.
Illuminati says, cool shirt in the chat to me. This art is Chris Dyer, is the artist. Chris Dyer Positive Creations is what you would Google to find. This is actually a painting that was put on a shirt, but it looks kind of digital. Yeah. But it's originally from a painting. He's an awesome painter. That's awesome. Really, really badass. Big fan of his. So
is Beth going to do Subscribe Star? Do you know? Or is she just going to?
Sticking to Rockfin.
Okay.
She didn't really have a lot. That's why it was so ironic that they unlaunched her. Well, she wasn't even really using it. She just had a page, but she hadn't gotten very many patrons and wasn't really putting anything there. And didn't even post the, thing that Gulag didn't like onto Patreon, and they still unlaunched her. Not unlike how Corbett, for the entirety of Patreon existing, he had a page where you could pay him $1 and then he would email you a way to log into his website. The only thing on his Patreon was just that. There were no posts, there were no videos, there was no information. And he had thousands of subscribers on there, and Patreon canceled him. And it became clear that in their terms of service, it says that whatever you do with the Patreon funding is also subject to the terms and conditions of, community guidelines and whatever bullshit. Yeah. So basically that they presume that everything that you make or do in your life had to have come from the Patreon money, as if like the videos he makes and puts elsewhere couldn't have been self-funded or funded in some other way. It's just wild. The big tech overreach. My most recent episode was with Beth Martins, actually, and we did get into the legal rights that you should know that you have, taking radical personal responsibility, how to deal with the infringements going on in terms of like if your employer wants you to get a poison dart or whatever. So anyway, a lot of variety of content as always on my show, but lately it's been pretty, like last month, pretty focused on the transhumanism thing. The cybernetics episode with Wayne McCroy Jr. I mentioned, I feel like we really knocked it out of the park. You will learn a few things about not just the game plan of manipulators and controllers, but also the fractal or metaphysical dynamics of feedback loops and systems. And that ties right into what we're talking about with the biofield too. So it's really cool. It's like, you wouldn't think that a conversation about transhumanism and cybernetics could relate to a conversation about sound healing, but the deeper you go into these things, the more it's like all one thing going on, same thing.
Yeah. Well, and there's a reason why they attack the way they do and the things they do, and all of that is targeted at our natural ways of being connected to source, healing ourselves, living independently, living interdependently in a healthy balance, and all of those things, because that's what keeps us going and that's what keeps us free from their systems of control. So it makes sense that they're connected too when you think about it that way. So InnerversePodcast.com. Check out the Innerverse podcast if you don't already. Obviously, go watch the videos on Rockfin if you don't already. And Chance, what would you like to leave people with as your final thoughts?
God, I don't know, man. I think I'm all thought out. Like, really feel like we covered it super well. And follow the beauty in your life. Follow the things that make you go, ah, instead of erg. That never will fail you. Radically be you. Do the things and like the things that you like and what you're attracted to, and follow that. And you can't go wrong. You don't need to follow anybody else but yourself. And anyone that tells you otherwise is inaccurate. But, along that journey, we also have to realize that our wishes can be compromised. I can't wait till someday when we have like a never ending story conversation. Because now I just want to go into that whole topic of like the right way of wishing.
Yeah. Knowing what your wishes come from and why you're wishing that. And
that's what I'll leave people with. Read the never ending story. I don't care about the movie. It's okay. Read the book. Read the book. Me and Lindsay are nerding out on that a lot lately.
Yeah, I've been trying to tell people, it's so weird. This is so funny. So for 20 or more years, I try to tell people, they're like, what's your favorite book? And I'm like, The Never-Ending Story. And they're like, oh, haha, no, like, what's your actual favorite book? I'm like, that is actually my favorite book. They're like, you're an English nerd, you're an English teacher, that's your favorite book. I'm like, that is the only book I've ever read that literally has the secret to anything you ever needed to know the secret to life, the secret to healing, the secret to your path, the secret to alchemical truths, the secret to literally every bit of esoteric knowledge. Like, it is all in there. And that is genius to pull off. And people just don't believe me. So then Alan has read it and I was like, what? And then you read it and I was like, holy cow, real adults are reading this all of a sudden. And this is so cool. And then I was at the post office the other day, mailing something, and this guy comes up and he's like, I like your tattoo. What is it? And I was like, oh, thank you. It's The Never-Ending Story. And he said, the book or the movie? And I was like, there's a book? Like, no one knows that. And he's like, oh, it's my favorite book. I was like, dude, shut the fuck up. What is happening right now? Like, this has never happened in my life. And now all these people have read it. And I feel like this is like a revolution. So hopefully everyone out there is enticed to read the book, because it's beautiful and wonderful and so easy to read. It's such a good book.
It must be because the nothing is spreading so rapidly, and we got to give the childlike empress a name pretty quick.
Yeah, I know her name. All right. Well, yes. Thank you for those final beautiful thoughts and the stories they engendered. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric, a dose of wisdom according to Chance, the master of the Innerverse. Chance, thank you as always for being here. You're a badass.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Always fun.
Expect energetic alignment. Focus on the balance of all things. Invite the ever-increasing harmony and organization of your field of being. Find the ways in which your own personal acoustics and harmonizations uplift you. Find the ways in which your disharmonics and discordances disrupt your movement and flow. Spend time fine-tuning yourself into being able to read your own sheet music of the soul and begin to write symphonies of your own transcendence. Listen deep, harmonize, and flow. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Never have a Domestic terrorists.
They're not wearing masks.
Domestic terrorists. It's that basic, it's that simple.
And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people?
These extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
They're not wearing masks.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Open sensitize them to what we have to do.
Potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
We've made it our mission to limit the spread of this disease and to limit the risks to lives and to our economy. We've been clear from the beginning that getting together in groups outside of your household that is not permitted is not allowed.
And we need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing.
This nation, this idea called America, was and always will be a new world. Our new world.
Today we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis.
They're not wearing masks.
You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work? I am.